Hello everyone, this is your friend Naruto What If Hub 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. The God of Shinobi. What if Naruto awakened the Thousand Eyes? Part 2. Naruto took a seat next to Hinata. Next to him, Sarah sat down. Kurenai took the other seat next to Hinata. The auditorium of the academy was a large room, big enough to hold 100 people comfortably. A space that was quickly being filled as more shinobi hopefuls and their parents' guardians filed in. Naruto had several of his eyes floating overhead, where they went unnoticed by most of the occupants. The Anbu stationed in the room had taken notice and almost acted when they remembered that Uzumaki Naruto was present in the building. They still kept their guard up. With his unique vantage point, Naruto could see where everyone was and even got a good look at who they were. He recognized several familiar faces, the most recent Sasuke, his brother, and that Shisui guy. They were sitting a couple of rows ahead of them. He guessed that Sasuke was a cool guy. Sure, they didn't have the best of starts with him asking about his blindfold. But Naruto had prepared himself for the reality that someone would ask him that question, and he would have to explain why he wore one. The way he saw it, there would be one of two reactions to his story in revealing his power. There would be that initial moment where they would be shocked and sicken, but after that, either A, they would not get over their discomfort and would make a point to avoid him or even bully for his misfortune. In which case, he would keep his distance from them and defend himself when B, they would get over their discomfort and try to get to know him better, allowing them to become quick friends. Sasuke had fallen into the latter category. He had that initial moment of disgust and fear, a bit more so than most people would when they learned about his Futogen. Given that he was an Uchiha, Naruto could forgive that. Not for the first time, Naruto muses if he could use the powers of other dojustas if he ever came into possession of them. Sasuke had quickly gotten a hold of himself and even said he thought his power was kind of cool, then boasted about how it didn't compare to his clan's eyes. Naruto had the feeling that they would become good friends. Speaking of friends, Naruto saw several of them sitting throughout the auditorium. Having been taken in as a ward of the Hyuga clan, something that Naruto would be forever grateful about even if the elders were asshats, and being a personal friend of Hinata, Naruto was given the opportunity to meet and befriend the children of several major and minor shinobi clans. Mostly the heirs and heiresses, most he was on good terms with, some though he had become close friends with. In the same row as him and Hinata, but sitting on the opposite end, was Kiba, a feral-looking boy with brown and red fang marks on his cheeks. His mother, equally wild-looking, had an irritated expression on her face. Given that he was acting like an unruly mess and was loud enough for Naruto to hear, he could take a good guess as to why. Naruto smirked to himself. And Sarah Nizen thinks I'm a handful. Wait until you get a sight of kibble breath there. He thought to himself. He took notice of the small puppy sitting on Kiba's head. A few rows behind, he saw a large boy eating a bag of chips, choji, and a boy with black hair that looked like the top of a pineapple, Shikamaru, and he was asleep. Lazy Nara, he wondered what their other blonde-haired friend was. Ah, there you are, Ino. Naruto thought, seeing the bossy but admittedly nice girl. And who's this you're sitting next to? There was another girl next to her. Unusual pink hair with a red ribbon tied into it. A new friend of Ino's. He didn't recognize her from any of the clans, and he hadn't heard of any clan with pink hair. Her clothes suggested she was from a civilian family. Naruto had a frown on his face as he thought over that detail. He didn't have the best history with civilians and their kids. Grant they were improving, but still not on good terms. He wondered how the girl would fit into their dynamic. He would have to find out for later as he spotted the last of his friends. A black-haired boy wearing a trench coat and glasses that covered his eyes, his father sat next to him dressed almost identical. There were several empty seats around them. It seemed no one wanted to be near the bug people. Naruto shook his head, disappointed at how quick people were to judge. He could sympathize with them. There are a lot of people here. He heard Hinata says softly. Naruto nodded his agreement. Taking out the adults, there were around 100 students here, and that was in the first year alone. He imagines his class would get smaller with each year as the students would be weeded out. From what he heard from Gigi and Hinata's dad, a third of their year group would have dropped out by the time they got to graduation. Maybe even half, depending on the quality or lack thereof of the students. The academy was meant to weed out the weak and build up the strongest, the brightest, and the most talented. Wonder how many of them realize what they're in for. Most forgot that while it didn't have all the same restrictions, the shinobi forces of Konoha and, by extension, the academy was a military institution. Most of the parents believed that their child would become some noble hero of the village and live a life of glory and adventure. Naruto knew better. Hinata's father, Sarah, and even Kurama had seen to that. While there would be elements of that fantasy, he knew it would be a life of hardship and that he would see and do things that would haunt him. But despite this, he still wished to protect the village and the people he held dear to his heart. Yay, there is, Naruto said after a moment of thought. Naruto-kun, can you see the others? Hinata asked. Naruto nodded. They are scattered throughout the room. Kiba is the only one who's in the same row as us. Pup, settle down before I thump you on the head. Though I imagine you already knew that. Naruto said with a smirk. Hinata giggled. I think Iwa knows. They heard Kurenai comment. Kami, help me if I get stuck as that boy's Jonin sensei. They continued to chatter before silence fell over the room. The headmaster of the academy had stepped up to the podium. He waited for everyone to stop talking and to turn their attention to him. Hello everyone, he said, his voice enhanced by chakra so he could be heard throughout the auditorium. It is good to see all of you here today. As many of you know, the Nadaime established this institution in the hopes to cultivate the young minds that would grow to be the future generation of Konoha shinobi. It was his fervent hope that the academy would equip these future generations with the tools, skill set, and knowledge they needed to defend our great village. From this very building, some of the greatest legends and heroes were molded here. The Sannin and Yodaime, just to name a few. Speaking of legends, I would like to introduce one that needs not an introduction, our very own Sandaime Hokage. The headmaster stepped away from the podium, allowing the old Hokage to step up. Applause sounded throughout the auditorium. The Hokage waved to the crowd before he waited for the noise to die down. Once it did, he cleared his throat and spoke. My fellow citizens of Konoha, it warms these old bones to see so many youths hearing the call to defend this great and mighty village. I thank all of you children for answering this call, and I thank your parents for allowing you to come here. As our resident headmaster said, you are our future generation of shinobi. You are our defenders to be, the ones that shall bear the burden of protecting this village from its enemies alongside countless others. In all of you, I can see the will of fire burning brightly. Some claim that it is power, and the will to gain power by any means necessary is what makes for a strong shinobi. That no sacrifice is too small or too great, that the ends will always justify the means. I say no to this, and so did our Shodai and Nadaime Hokages. They believed that a shinobi was at his strongest when he was defending his home, his friends, and, most importantly, his family. They viewed this village as their home and all its people as their family. Just as I do now, looking at all of you now, I see not a collection of strangers but a gathering of family. Brothers and sisters, cousins, nephews, and nieces. This village is my home, and you are my family, one I would gladly give my life for. Just as all of you shall one day see. Alone a shinobi is nothing but, together with his village, his comrades in arms, and his family, he is an unstoppable force. The will of fire allowed us to emerge victorious in the 3 great shinobi wars and countless other disasters that befell us. So as long the will of fire burns within even one heart, Konoha will survive. The crow erupted into loud cheering and abuse, giving the Hokage a standing ovation. The Hokage waited several minutes as the crowd continued. The old man was giving everyone a fond smile. Naruto, however, noticed a wariness in his smile. Kurama had explained to him from what he had observed that the position of Hokage was both an honor and a burden. He wondered how much of a toll it had taken on his honorary grandfather. Another reason for the blindfolded blonde to become Hokage as quickly as possible, so the old man could enjoy the retirement he rightfully deserved. The crowd died down, and everyone took their seats. He cleared his throat and continued his speech. I will warn you now, while the path of the shinobi is a rewarding one, it is one of great hardship. Many great shinobi have given their lives in defense of this village, and one day you will be expected to do the same. The Shodia, Nadaime, and Yondaime each gave their lives to protect the village they loved so much. Their sacrifice is still honored and remembered today, and is well yours. A grim silence fell over the crowd at the mention of the past Hokages and their sacrifices, and the possibility that the children training to be shinobi would join them one day. It was a thought that most preferred to pass to the backs of their minds. The moment was brief as the Sandaime smiled. But until then, I hope all of you have a great day. The Hokage stepped away from the podium, allowing the headmaster to take his place. With that said, this orientation is finished. I ask that the students begin to leave for their classrooms. In the hallway just outside, you will find several sheets of paper that will tell you your assigned class and where to find it. Parents and guardians, you are free to leave anytime or remain here. Refreshments will be provided as you wait for your charges and are free to mingle amongst yourselves. Again, I welcome every student here and look forward to the next 5 years together. Dismissed. The group of 4 waits for the rest of the row to clear out before getting up and leaving. Now, Hinata-sama and Naruto-kun, this is where we'll be leaving you, Sarah said as they got to the doorway. Remember, you two, this is your first day, so there is no pressure on you to excel, Kurenai added. So, try to enjoy yourselves. We will. Naruto said. I'll try, too, Hinata said softly. Sarah looks at Naruto. And Naruto, do please try to stay out of trouble. I don't need another lecture from the elders. She said. Naruto gave her a mock expression of disbelief. Sarah-chan, I'm not that big of a troublemaker. He responded. The Hyuga woman had an expression that could be translated as, you couldn't convince yourself. Naruto felt a sweat drop roll down his neck. I'll try, but I make no guarantees. Sarah looked at him for a second longer before closing her eyes and sighing. I suppose that will have to do. Just try not to get caught if you do. Naruto gave his guardian one of his fox grins. Now that I can do. It was at this moment that Sarah decided to end the conversation before she could become an accessory to whatever her charge was planning. You two better get going before you're late to your first day of class. If you need us, we'll be waiting here at the auditorium. Kurenai said, giving the 2 children a fond smile. Now off with you two. The 2 children nodded at the adults. Naruto grabs Hinata's hand, getting a blush from the shy girl. Come on Hinata, let's go. He said before dragging the red-faced girl into the crowd of children. Kurenai watched as the 2 disappeared from sight. She turned her attention to the Hyuga woman next to her. Naruto sure is a handful sometimes. Isn't he? She said to her friend. You don't know the half of it. The woman responded with a faint smile present. That boy has more energy than he knows what to do with. A chuckle escaped her lips. Though if I am to be entirely honest with myself, if it were not for all the lectures from the elders about Naruto's antics, I might enjoy his troublemaking more. At the very least, he does make life more interesting. Indeed, he does. Kurenai agreed. It was funny, a year ago, before she had met Hinata and before she had met Sarah, her mental image of a Hyuga would like anyone else. A cold, distant, and arrogant human being that only held respect because of their name. She would never say it aloud, as she was the one to show respect to others even if they did not deserve it in kind. When the clan head of the Hyuga said they would be acting as Hinata's escort outside of the compound, she had expected the girl to be the epitome of what a Hyuga was. Hinata was anything, but she was almost shy as a mouse and tended to stutter all over herself. Especially when a certain blonde was involved. Kurenai never thought she would meet a shy Hyuga, and in the same vein, she never thought she would be friends with one. Sarah was closer to what she thought of what a Hyuga was but did not completely fit into that mold. Certainly, she came off as a rather strict person, but there was a sort of caring undertone to it. Most times, she was a calm and collected individual being the picture definition of Hyuga stoicism, but tiny little things made her drop that mask and show a more emotional side to her. Like whenever she bickered with Naruto, her charge, with him, she acted like an annoyed big sister, and no matter how much she denied it, there was always a subtle smile on her lips when they fought. Likewise, whenever someone was cruel to Naruto or showed even the slightest sign of wanting to harm the boy, the woman was ready and willing to leap into action, showing that mothers were not the only thing to worry about when messing with their young. From her interactions with Sarah, Hinata and her family, she had learned that while there were plenty of Hyuga that fell into the stereotype, there were plenty more that did not. Even some of the former had small little quirks that made them seem more human if you paid enough attention. Plus, it was nice to have another Kunoichi as a friend who was not completely batshit insane. Anko, I love you like a sister, but you drive me crazy sometimes. Kurenai turned around. Come on, Sarah, let us go and see if we can find Itachi and Shisui. She had noticed the small blush on Sarah's face when she talked with Shisui. I'm certain that you're interested in getting to know them better. The women of the Yamanaka clan were not the only ones that liked to play matchmaker after all. An Hyuga and an Uchiha that was going to make things interesting. I would be interested to learn more about them. Sarah responded, following Kurenai into the auditorium. Shikamaru had been of the first to enter the classroom, mainly so he could find a good place to nap undisturbed. To anyone else coming in, they would see him acting like a typical Nara of the male genome, lazy as can be. That was true by their nature. Most Nara men and some of the women were easygoing and preferred not to deal with what they termed as troublesome. This also served as a cover. What few knew or even suspected was that they were very observant individuals, scarcely so at times. It came with their high intelligence, so even when they were lazily sleeping or appeared to be, they were fully aware of their surroundings. Nara Shikamaru had chosen the top roll of the classroom to have the best vantage point to observe the class while he slept. No one noticed, not even Choji, his best friend sitting next to him, took note that every time a student walked through the door, Shikamaru would peek it from a small gap in between his folded arms. His sharp mind would analyze them and make quick determinations on whether they would graduate from the academy and become shinobi. Most he noted were civilian children, not surprising despite numerous shinobi clans and smaller shinobi families. A large portion of Konoha's shinobi corps came from civilian stock. He also knew better than to underestimate civilian-born shinobi. The Yondaime, Jiraiya, and even Orochimaru had proven that one did not need to be from a prominent clan or family to become a great shinobi. Some he had already decided would not make it. Maybe a few would get through a year or two before dropping out but would not be shinobi all the same. Others would, but he determined that they would not become anything noteworthy. The rest, as he noted, were the ones to keep an eye on. Speaking of, Shikamaru briefly glanced over at the odd sight of a pair of eyes floating above the classroom. So, you're attending as well. How troublesome now, I'll have two annoying blondes to deal with. Shikamaru's gaze returned to the rest of the class. The notable students were, for one, all clan-born and heirs no less. There goes the whole, you don't need to be born from greatness to be great, notion, and two, they were all his friends. You'd think a higher power had planned this. The one exception was a pink-haired girl sitting next to Ino. He remembered Ino mentioning the other day that she made a new friend and that she would be attending the academy with them. The girl was shyly clinging to the Yamanaka girl, but Shikamaru could see that her timid eyes hid a keen intellect. Sitting down in the front row, the Nara could see another unfamiliar face or, to be more accurate, unfamiliar back. But the symbol on his shirt was something that everyone in the village knew well. The trademark red and white fan of the Uchiha clan was a dead giveaway of the boy's heritage. If the pattern were to hold and Shikamaru knew better than to doubt such things, then this boy was the son of the Uchiha clan head. Didn't he have an older brother who was rumored to become Anbu captain? This is going to be an interesting class, he decided. Troublesome. The doors slid open, and in walked two figures he knew very well. Uzumaki Naruto walked in with a very shy and very red Hyuga Hinata clinging to his arm. The boy had a bright, cheery smile on his face as he strolled in, with Hinata closing the door behind them. Kiba was the second to notice their presence as the wild boy greeted them with a boast. Well, if it isn't the Hyuga's favorite pet, he said hotly. Hey, kibble breath, Naruto responds. I see you finally got a master to keep you on a leash. My apologies to you, little guy. I imagine he's a handful to keep up with. Hey, bark. The puppy on Kiba's head answered, wagging his tail. Akamaru no siding with the enemy. Kiba whined to his partner. From there, things descend into a heated but strangely friendly argument between the two boys. Shikamaru had to refrain from rolling his eyes and kept his amused smile hidden. Contrary to appearance, the two arguing boys were close friends and were just as quick to support each other as they would fight. Their fight lasted for a few minutes, with the two almost challenging each other to a spar before the doors slid open again, and two men walked in, both wore Chunin vests. The first one had tanned skin, a scar across his nose, and his hair was done in a ponytail. He has a friendly, almost brotherly aura coming from him. The other one had white hair that went to his shoulders, and for reasons that Shikamaru couldn't place, he felt something was off about the man. All right, class, settle down and get to your seats, said the scarred Chunin. The class quickly did as he said. Once everyone was settled, the man smiled at everyone. Hello everyone, I'm Yumino Iruka, the man introduced himself. And I'll be your homeroom sensei for the next 5 years. But please just call me Iruka sensei. The other man stepped up. I'm Tuji Mizuki, and I'll be Iruka's assistant. The now named Mizuki introduced himself with a smile. A smile that almost felt forced. I look forward to the next few years together, and I hope to see every one of you graduate and become fine shinobi of Konoha. Now I believe it is time for some introductions. When Mizuki-sensei calls for your name, please step out in front of the class, introduce yourself. Give us some of your likes, dislikes, hobbies, and goals for the future. Iruka instructed. Let me and Mizuki give an example. My name is Yumino Iruka. I like ramen, hot springs and of course this class. I dislike Mazagohan, perverts, and spiders. My hobbies include visiting the hot springs and figuring out different ways of teaching. My goal is to see all of you graduate from the academy. Mizuki stepped up next, a sheet of paper in hand. I am Tuji Mizuki. I like my girlfriend Tsubaki, sushi, and learning new jutsus. My dislikes include ramen, foxes, and the ignorant. My hobbies include reading up about new jutsus and being with my girlfriend. My goal is much the same as Iruka's, to see all of you become shinobi. He finished his introduction with a bow. Now it's your turn. First up is Aburame Shino. Watching the trench-coated boy walking down to the front of the classroom, Shikamaru could hear a boy in the row below him whisper to his buddy something about bug boy and freak, followed by snickering between the two. The closed minds of some people. Shikamaru thought bitterly. The boy stopped in front of the class and brought his fingers to his glasses, putting them back into place. I am Aburame Shino. My likes include bugs, my clan, and winter melon. I dislike those who harm bugs needlessly and foods that are strong smelling. My hobbies are studying insects and collecting them. My goals are to discover new species of insects and become a worthy successor to my father as clan head. The boy didn't give the teachers much of a chance to respond before he returned to his seat. Up next is Akamichi Choji. Mizuki said. Next to him, Choji stood up, still eating his chips. Great. Not only do we have a bug freak in the class but also a fats. The boy from a second ago was interrupted by a grunt from Shikamaru. The boy and his friend turned to face him, giving him odd looks. Lazily the Nara boy points his finger. The boys followed and froze in fright. Choji, the normally kind, sweet kid, gave them a death glare that would make seasoned shinobi take a step back. Needless to say, the boys didn't finish their conversation and would likely remain silent for the rest of the day. Choji got to the front of the classroom. My name is Akamichi Choji. I like eating, my friend Shikamaru, and butterflies. I dislike bullies and anything food I cannot eat. My hobbies are eating lots of food and hanging out with my friends. My goal is to one day run my family's restaurant. When Choji got back to his seat, Mizuki read off more names, and the students would introduce themselves. Mostly boring stuff that Shikamaru could not be bothered to remember. Haruno Sakura, seeing the pink-haired girl next to Ino stand got the Nara's attention. The girl shyly made her way to the front of the class. My name is Haruno Sakura. I like reading, my friend Ino-san, and dumplings. I don't like perverts, bullies, and anything spicy. My hobbies are reading and playing trivia games. I don't have a goal that I can think of other than maybe becoming a strong kunoichi. The girl gave a quick bow before she darted back to her seat. Another student was introduced before a familiar name was called up. Hyuga Hinata. Shikamaru looked down at where the Hyuga heiress was sitting at. He saw Naruto lay a comforting hand on her and whisper something to her. The girl nodded at him, a small blush on her cheeks lighting up. The girl got up from her seat and slowly walked out in front of the classroom. The girl was pushing her index fingers together, a shy habit of hers she had yet to grow out of. My name is Hyuga Hinata. I like cinnamon, rabbits, and nar, the girl stuttered out. Shikamaru had an idea of what she was trying to say, or who. My friends. She quickly changed. I don't like bullies, CR crabs, and the caged bird seal used by my sea clan. My hobby is flower pressing. My goal is to become a strong and capable kunoichi and become the head of my clan and change it for the better. Towards the end, she had become more confident. The girl bowed and quietly returned to her seat. The next to be called for was everyone's second favorite loudmouth. Inuzuka Kiba. The feral-appearing boy just about jumped down from his row to the front of the class, his canine partner nestled in the front of his jacket. My name is Inuzuka Kiba, the most awesome guy you will ever meet. I like dogs, especially my partner, Hirakamaru. Said partner gave a happy bark getting coos from some of the girls, most meets, and girls. I don't like cats and anything that isn't chewy. My hobbies are training and walk my clan's dogs. My goal is to become the best tracker in the village. His introduction was loud and obnoxious. Shikamaru swore he saw a sweatshop appear on Aruka's head. Perhaps next time, you can be a bit less enthusiastic when you talk. He said with a nervous laugh. Mizuki continued to call out names, and they continued to give forgettable introductions. Then they got to his name. Shikamaru stood up, grumbling about troublesome things, under his breath. He had his hands in his pockets, and his back was hunched as he slowly walked to the front of the class. He looks over the class trying to decide what he should say and how much trouble it could cause him. My name is Nara Shikamaru. My likes are clouds, shogi, and my friend Choji. I dislike troublesome things. My hobbies include sleeping, cloud watching, and playing shogi. My goal is to become an average shinobi and to marry an average woman and have 2 kids, 1 boy and 1 girl. He yawned when he finished his introduction, then bowed and returned to his seat. On the way, he passed both Naruto and Ino, and both muttered, "Lazy Nara." His response was, "Troublesome blondes." More names passed, and the Nara was about ready to fall asleep for real. Uchiha Sasuke. Several people perked up at the mention of the famous clan's name. The boy with 1x eyes turned to face the class, and several of the girls swooned. Great. Shikamaru whined to himself. We got fangirls in here as well. What a drag. The Uchiha boy began his introduction. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I like my old brother Itachi, tomatoes, and learning more about my clan. I dislike sweet things. Hobbies are training and spending time with my brother. My goal is to follow in my brother's footsteps and become a powerful shinobi. I'm sure you will, Iruka said, seeing the boy return to his seat. Mizuki, let's get to the last students and wrap up things. Mizuki nodded to Iruka and looked back to the sheet. He was about to call out the next name when he stopped himself. That had been enough to catch Shikamaru's full attention, and for a moment, he saw a wide range of emotions flash across the man's face. First, confusion followed by disbelief. Then his face twisted in fear, anger, and disgust of an intensity that it frightened the Nara. Then all at once, the man got a hold of himself and returned to his previous passive and friendly state. The shift in the man's behavior had lasted less than maybe 3 seconds. It had been enough to put Shikamaru on edge around the man, and he would keep an eye on him for anything else strange. Iruka had noticed the pause from his assistant. Mizuki-san, is something the matter? He asked, concerned. Mizuki turned his head to Iruka with an apologetic face. Sorry, Iruka-san just spaced out there for a second. Nothing to worry about. He turned his attention back to the roll sheet. Uzumaki Naruto. A flash of recognition flashed on Iruka's face, but nothing more, certainly no indication of how he felt about the blonde with the blindfold. Gears started to turn in Shikamaru's head as other details about the Hyuga ward came to mind. Namely, how the adults treated him. On the few occasions he had seen Naruto out of the Hyuga compound, he had noticed the strange behavior the older generation exhibited around the blind boy. They weren't hostile to him, at least not outwardly showing hostility. But they did noticeably become tenser around him. They tried to ignore him but could not stop themselves from treating him like he was a paper bomb. Shikamaru had once brought his observations to his father and asked him what he thought of it. The answer he got was an interesting one and had only served to further pique his interest in the mystery of Uzumaki Naruto. Firstly, his father had lied to him, saying he did not know anything about it. As far as he could remember, his father had never lied to him about anything, so have him do it was disturbing. His father knew what was happening, and he would not or could tell him. Shikamaru couldn't decide which was worse. Then a moment later, his father had grabbed him by his shoulders and gave him one most intense stare he had ever seen on the man's face. What he said had stuck with him. No matter what you hear or learn about him, Shika, you must remember to judge that boy solely on who he is and his merits. I will tell you this now, that boy deserves better, and I am glad that his life has recently taken a turn for the better. Promise me that no matter what happens, you will stick with Uzumaki Naruto or leave him for the right reasons. Can you promise me that? His father did not give him a chance to answer, saying that only he needed to know that. Stay with or leave his friend. And for the right reasons. What did his father mean by that? He acted as though he would abandon Naruto one day. Why would he do that? Why did the adults treat Naruto like a ticking time bomb? Why was his father keeping secrets from him? Many more questions swirled in his mind and would leave him up at night muttering troublesome. Hey, isn't he that one kid? Shikamaru had noticed that some of his generation had become infected with their parents' behavior. Yay, I think he is. Didn't our parents tell us to stay away from him? I think they did. Does that mean we'll have to drop out? I don't know. Shikamaru tuned the other students out and focused on Naruto. He saw the blonde get up. Hinata was giving him a worried look. Wordlessly he walked out in front of the class and turned to face them. For a brief second, his face was expressionless, and Shikamaru was left to wonder what was going around in his head. Then a smile that could outdo the sun appeared on his face. My name's Uzumaki Naruto, he loudly proclaimed. I like ramen, Hinata-chan, said Hyuga Arisept, and the color orange. I dislike the 5 minutes it takes to make instant ramen, bullies, kidnappers, and people who can't tell the difference between the kunai and the scroll. At this, both of the adults stiffened and gave each other a concerned look. My hobbies include trying different kinds of ramen, gardening, and training. My goal? No, my dream is to become the greatest of the Hokages. The class was stunned into silence, not that they were making much noise to start with. This overly cheery ramen-addicted kid had just claimed that he would be the village's leader one day. Shikamaru rolled his eyes and silently muttered, "Troublesome ramen-addicted blonde." He heard a sneeze. Looking back to the front, he saw Naruto rubbing his nose. "I guess someone is talking about me," he said. He was about to walk back to his seat. "Why are you wearing a blindfold? Are you blind?" asked a student. Shikamaru should have known that question was going to come up at some point. He already knew, and so did several others in the room, all of them friends of Naruto. It gave them all a reason to dislike Kumo, even himself, who normally found such things to be too troublesome. Now, class. I'm certain that is something that Uzumaki-san would prefer to keep private. Uruka said. But how can he be a shinobi if he can't see anything? Another student asked. There have been blind shinobi before, some of them quite famous. Uruka tried to explain, but there was some uncertainty in his words. Uruka-san, he may have a point, Mizuki interjected. We can't in good conscience let a. It's alright. Naruto interrupted. Both adults look at him expectantly. I knew this would come. He turned his head back to face the class. To answer your question, the reason why I'm wearing a blindfold is that I have no eyes in my head. The class remained silent as they listened to Naruto's explanation. As for how that happened, well, that's a long story, and I imagine Uruka-sensei wants to get through the introductions. Don't you? The scared Chunin nodded his head. So, I'll be brief, 2 years ago, there was an incident that cost me my eyes. Naruto removed his blindfold, showing the whole class his empty eye sockets. The whole class gasped, and more than a few looked green. Naruto put his blindfold back on. But that does not mean I am blind. What do you mean you're not blind? The student in front of Shikamaru asked. You said you had no eyes. Naruto had a fox-like grin. The same smile that told the Nara and his friends that the blonde was about to pull one of his. I said I didn't have any eyes in my head. Shikamaru couldn't see it, but he knew the boy was frowning. What difference does Tao? The screaming boy tumbled back in his seat, his head almost hitting the desk behind him. Shikamaru could not help the small smile forming on his lips. The entire class, senseis included, whipped their heads to see what had frightened the boy. For a few seconds, it seemed like the boy was jumping at his shadow. He raised a shaking finger, guiding everyone's line of sight to what had caused his reaction. For anyone else who had not seen it before and had long since filed the detail as being strange but ignorable, seeing a pair of eyes floating in the air must have been a strange sight for sure. For Shikamaru and Naruto's other friends, it was average. The eyes floated towards Naruto and hovered above his outstretched hand. The difference is that my eyes are not in my head. Other eyes appeared around Naruto, and for the first time, the class started to take note of the eyeballs that floated around the class. To be expected, more than a few looked creeped out. Any other questions will have to wait for now. Uruka-sensei, can I return to my seat? No. It took a moment for the Uruka to shake off his daze. Sure. Go ahead, Uzumaki-san. He said. Naruto returned to his seat. The class was whispering to themselves. Mizuki-san, call up the last name. Alright, Mizuki said, sounding like he was still processing. Yamanaka Ino. Final. You got to me. The girl with platinum blonde hair said. What a drag, 2 troublesome blondes in a row. That has got to be illegal somewhere. Shikamaru groaned inside his head. The Yamanaka girl got to the front of the class. My name is Yamanaka Ino, the prettiest flower in this room. She said, flipping her hair. More like the most self-absorbed. Shikamaru thought. Continued. My likes include flowers, cherry tomatoes, and romance novels. I dislike lazy people. At this, Shikamaru shrugged. Judgmental people and show-offs. My hobbies are going shopping and gossip. My goal is to become the best kunoichi and to find the man of my dreams. Ino returned to her seat. With the final introduction done, Iruka spoke. Now that is out of the way, we'll have a brief lunch break, and then we'll gather outside in the back. There we have some demonstrations of what you know of ninjutsu followed by taijutsu matches between students. After that, classes will be dismissed. Any questions? None. Good. Class dismissed. Naruto stood with the rest of his outside of the academy. There were standing in of the small training areas that littered the back area of the outside. Lunch had been a somewhat interesting affair. He got to spend time with his friends. Mostly him arguing with Kiba about who was the strongest and Ino nagging to him about being a show-off. He did get to meet Ino's new friend Sakura. The girl with pink hair was nice and sweet, kind of cute though not as much as Hinata. Wait, did I just think that Hinata-chan was cute? Well, it is true. He thought to himself. The whole time the rest of the class stared at him, and even now, some of them gave him a wary eye. Understandable, but it was getting on his nerves. Alright, class, can anyone tell me what they know about chakra? Their class sensei Iruka asked, looking over the assembled body of students. For a little everyone stared at each other, wondering who would step up and answer their sensei's question. A small frown formed on the scared Chunin's face. He waited for an answer. Naruto was about to volunteer his answer when a voice cut him off. I can answer that. The attention of the class and senseis were now on a certain pink-haired girl. Chakra is the source of a shinobi's power. It is a combination of physical and spiritual energies and is present in all living beings. With chakra, a person can do any number of things that would normally be impossible, such as walking on water and moving mountains. Though the latter takes incredible strength and reserves of chakra. Iruka nodded at Sakura's explanation. Well done, Haruno-san. Chakra is an important part of a shinobi's life. Without it, we would not have the powers we have, not to mention we would not be alive without it, so that's a plus. He said with a smile. Now then, there are three main branches of techniques that make up the arsenal of a shinobi. First is ninjutsu, or in the literal meaning ninja art. It is the most well-known ability of all shinobi and is what enables us to shoot fireballs from our mouths and create tornadoes. Mizuki, if you will. The white-haired man nodded to his partner and went through a few hand signs. Bunshin no Jutsu. Two identical copies appeared beside him. The class was in awe of what they were seeing. Most of them were, but Naruto and the other kids from clans were unimpressed. It was a basic technique, and they had seen more impressive. What you see here is one of the many things you can do with ninjutsu. Iruka nodded to Mizuki, and the clones dispelled. What saw was the Bunshin no Jutsu. As you saw, it creates copies of the caster, but do not be mistaken. They are not real but are, in fact, illusions. They have no physical interactions with the world around them. It is best used as a distraction. You will be required to know this jutsu for the graduation exam alongside the Henge no Jutsu and the Kawarimi no Jutsu. Naruto frowned at that bit of news. He had learned that he could not do the Bunshin due to his massive reserves of chakra. It was like he was trying to drain an ocean into a bottle using a funnel. He just could not do it. It was a common problem that Jinchuriki and Uzumaki's faced. Naruto had the misfortune of being both. On the bright side, with the proper training, you will be able to spam out high-level jutsu like their candy. Kurama piped in. I'll still have to ask Iruka-sensei if there is an alternative that I can do besides the Bunshin. Naruto responded. Naruto listened to Iruka's explanation on the basic components of ninjutsu and demonstrated the 12 hand seals needed to mold chakra. Then on to explain taijutsu and genjutsu. There are, of course, other branches of ninja arts such as the Iryo ninjutsu and fuinjutsu. In time we will cover those, but for the most part, we will be learning more about ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu. Now then, would anyone like to demonstrate any jutsus they know? Iruka looked over the class to see if anyone would volunteer. Naruto stepped up. With him were Ino, Sasuke, Shino, and surprisingly Shikamaru. Iruka gave an approving nod, though he gave Naruto a worried look. He hoped that the man would, in time, be able to look past the fox and see him for who he was. Alright, you five line in front of the class. The 5 shinobi hopefuls did as he said. Now then, when I call you up, demonstrate the jutsu you wish to show the class. Be sure to inform Mizuki-san and me if you need one of us to act as a partner or a dummy. Understood. Yes, Iruka-sensei. The 5 chorused. Now then, Yamanaka Ino, you're up first. Iruka said. Ino walked out from the small line. Iruka-sensei, I'll need a volunteer for this. Iruka and Mizuki looked at each other. You want to go? Iruka asked. No, be my guest. Fine, but you get the next one. Iruka stepped out in front of Ino. Is this good? Iruka asked the platinum blonde. Perfect, Ino said, holding her hands out in an odd seal. Shintenshin no jutsu. A moment later, Ino's body went limp and slumped to the ground. At the same time, Iruka stiffened. Then Iruka looked up at the class, giving them a mischievous smile. To the confusion of almost everyone, the man struck a sexy pose. Hello class, it is I, your lovely sensei, under the control of the most beautiful Inohime. Naruto repressed his laughter to a chuckle. He heard Shikamaru mutter, troublesome blondes. It took a moment to realize what had happened, and chuckles from them floated around. Mizuki looked like he was ready to burst out laughing and was covering his mouth. After she had her fun, Ino released her control over Iruka, her body standing up, a satisfied smile present on her lips. Now in control of his body again, the scared Chunin gave the Yamanaka girl a nervous smile. Thank you Yamanaka-san for that interesting display. You may return to the rest of the class. Ino bowed and rejoined with the rest of the class, getting a high five from Naruto on the way. Next up is Aburame Shino. The Aburame walked out to the front. For a moment, it seemed like he was going to do nothing when the class noticed the stream of black moving away from him and gathering in a pile next to him. Slowly they realized it was a stream of bugs creeping more than a few out, particularly the girls. The pile formed up and began to shape into a humanoid form roughly the same height as Shino. Mushi Bunshin no Jutsu. The mass transformed into a perfect copy of Shino. The class looked equal parts, amazed, and disturbed at the 2 Shinos. Is this sufficient enough of a demonstration? One of the Shinos asked. Iruka nodded. Yes, that will do. Now dispel your clone and rejoin with the class. Shino silently nodded, and the clone deformed back into a swarm of insects that quickly retreated into his body. The boy returned to the group of students, several of them stepped away from him. Nara Shikamaru, you're up next. Troublesome. Why did I volunteer for his? The lazy pineapple head boy said, walking out from the line of now 2 people. I need a volunteer for this. He said before yawning. Your turn this Mizuki, Iruka said to his partner. Mizuki rolled his eyes. Alright, have it your way. What's the worst he can do? Mizuki asked, stepping out in front of the Nara boy. Mizuki, you should know better than ask such a question. Naruto thought, knowing that Shikamaru was going to take that as a challenge. Lazy as he was, the lazy boy had a devious mind that even Naruto didn't wish to incur the wrath of. Shikamaru formed his hands into a handseal not seen by the class. Kujimane no Jutsu. Then to most of the students' surprise, Shikamaru's shadow shot out from him and connected with Mizuki's. A distant sound could be heard as it did. Complete. The boy with pineapple hair muttered. He raised his hand, and Mizuki did the same like he was a mirror of the boy. So, this is the famous shadow possession that the Nara clan are known for. The man said nervously. Now, I don't suppose you can let me go, and we can move along the line. For a moment, Naruto saw a small smirk appear on the lazy boy's face and knew that he wasn't done with the assistant sensei. Maybe, Shikamaru said, but just one more thing. He added, what are you? Mizuki's question was cut off when he began to flap his arms and pick around like a chicken. The whole class started to laugh, pointing at the man that was acting like a chicken. Even Iruka appeared to be fighting back a grin and losing. After a moment, the scarred Chunin decided to come to the rescue of his friend and partner. Nara-san, I believe that will be enough. Release him and rejoin with the rest of the class. Understood, he said, the smile having won out. Yes, sensei, Shikamaru responded, releasing his hold over Mizuki. The man stopped acting like a chicken, and Shikamaru joined with the rest of the class, getting several high fives from other students. Though he did get a bump on the head from an irate Ino. The next person was called up. Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke walked up to the front. Uruka-sensei, I'll need a target for my jutsu. He said. Uruka nodded to the Uchiha boy. That can be done, Uchiha-san. Mizuki-san, if you will. I'm on it, Mizuki said, starting to walk away. Mizuki-sensei, Naruto said before the man could get too far. If it is not too much trouble to ask, could you also get me a target? My jutsu also requires it. He asked him. The white-haired Chunin looks to his partner for confirmation. Uruka nodded. It will save you a trip and a few minutes for the class. He explained. Mizuki sighed. Alright, too soon to be damaged or destroyed targets coming right up. A few minutes later, a target had been set up for the Sasuke, and another was lying beside Mizuki. Sasuke stood in front of the target set up for him. He took a breath, likely to calm himself and center his mind. He flashed 3 quick hand seals holding on Tora, and took a deep breath. Kaden. Gokakyu. Then he breathed out a steady stream of fire that formed into a ball, and it shot out towards the target. The thing never stood a chance and was consumed in the ball of fire. The flames quickly died down, leaving a small pile of burning wood. The class was amazed, and Naruto had to admit he was impressed. He's not half bad, isn't he, Kurama? Naruto asked the fox. Oh yes, really impressive. An Uchiha that can breathe fire. Who would have thought it possible? Next, you'll be telling me that they have some weird eye infection that gives them powers like copying other jutsus or mind-controlling people. Kurama said, his voice not dripping but drenched in sarcasm. If he still had them in his head, he would be rolling his eyes. The fox had an intense hatred towards the Uchiha clan, though not without good reason. Uruka put the flames out with a quick water jutsu. That was very impressive, Uchiha-san. In fact, that is the most advanced jutsu I've seen so far out of the class. You're definitely a level above your peers. Uruka praised the Uchiha boy. I'll be looking forward to your progress. Now then, rejoin with the rest of the class. Sasuke walked away, more than a few of the girls giving him longing looks. Alright, Uzumaki Naruto, you're last. Just let Mizuki-san set up your target first, and then you can show us what you can do. Uruka said. After about a minute of waiting, the target had been set up. Naruto walked out to face the target. Like Sasuke did before, he took a deep breath to calm himself and center his mind on what he wanted to do. He held his hand out, and one of his eyes floated out in front of it a few inches away. Focusing through the eyeball, he narrowed his sight on the target. He channeled his chakra molding into what he needed it to do and sending it through the invisible strings that connected him to his collection of eyes. This technique did not require hand seals to do but did require him to channel the chakra through his hands, a limitation he hoped to overcome one day. When he felt like the chakra was right, he activated his jutsu. Futogen. Piasu Shisen. Several bolts of light were shot out from the eye. Most found their mark on the target, leaving burning holes in it. The few that missed harmlessly dissipated as they only had enough energy to reach the target. Again, the class was stunned by what they saw, and his friends were surprised as well as he had not shown them this technique with it being a recent development. What do you think? Naruto asked mostly Uruka and, to a lesser extent, the class. That was, Uruka trailed off for a second uncertain of how he should respond. Interesting. He finished. Uzumaki-san, what was that? I've never seen or heard of a technique like that before. Uruka asked. Naruto could sense his curiosity was genuine. The other students were staring at him, keenly listening in. Naruto smiled at himself when they weren't giving him those hateful and fearful stares. Naruto liked being the center of attention. It's a technique I made for my Fudogen, he said, having the eye float above an outstretched hand. All I have to do is channel some chakra into my eyes, and they shot them out in concentrated bolts or beams. It takes a little bit of concentration. I see, Uruka said, absorbing the information. How long does it take to charge these bolts or beams? Depends on what I want them to do. Naruto answered. If I want to stun my opponents, then maybe a few seconds, and it would take several shots or the beam to connect for just as long. Anything beyond that, I'm really sure. But I am working on cutting down on the times to make it more viable in a fight. I'm thinking maybe mostly using to distract my opponents by making them worry about multiple angles of attack. Naruto explained. Interesting, Uruka said, rubbing his chin. I would be interested in talking to you more about this technique. It sounds like it can be very useful, Uruka said. Mizuki coughed, getting the attention of the two. While I find this to be just as fascinating as you, Uruka-san. We do have a class to take care of, he said. Uruka nodded to his friend. We'll talk about this later when we have more time, Uzumaki-san. Naruto smiled, sensing the opportunity to make another friend. He felt like Uruka was a good person. For whatever reason, Naruto was an unusually good judge of character. What he did not know was that since he was the container of the Kyuubi or Kurama as he came to know him as, Naruto could, on a subconscious level, sense the intentions of others. Kurama made a mental note to tell the boy and teach him how to use it on a conscious level. For the same reason, he felt something was off about Mizuki. He would have to be careful around that man. Sure, I would love to. I know this great place that makes the best ramen. Maybe we can talk about it over a few bowls. Uruka smiled. I would be happy to just let me know where it is, and we'll meet up there sometime. My treat. Uruka had unknowingly condemned his wallet to a painful death. Now then that demonstrations are over, let us get on to the rest of the class. Everyone follow me. The class followed the scared Chunin to another section of the training field. This one had a large circle drawn into it, a sparring arena. Alright, class, Uruka called to everyone. For our last activity of the day, we will be having taijutsu spars between students. Sparring partners will be chosen at random. Mizuki stepped forward, holding a glass bowl full of small sheets of paper. In this bowl are the numbers 1 to 15. Each number has a copy, meaning that there are 2 of each number. Uruka explained, getting nods from the class. Each of you will get to draw one number, and you will spare against the person who drew the same number as you. For example, Uruka reached into the bowl and drew out a sheet of paper. Number 11, he said, showing the number to the class. That means my opponent would whoever draw out the other 11. Do you understand? Uruka asked, putting the sheet back into the bowl. Everyone nodded. Good. Then let's get started. It didn't take long for everyone to draw their numbers. Should I be worried that I drew this number? Naruto asked, holding the number 9. Or be happy about it? Beats me. Kurama responded in a monotone voice. Considering the luck of you, Uzumakis, it could go either way. Now that everyone has a number, we can begin to determine the sparring pairs. Uruka said once everyone was done. I will call out each number. The students with that number will enter the ring. Each match will last 5 minutes. The scared Chunin pulls out a small timer from one of his pouches. Once the timer goes off or when Mizuki or I say stop, you will stop the spar and not a moment after. Am I understood? Yes, sensei. The winner of each match will be determined by Mizuki and I or when one of you manages to pin your opponent to the floor for 5 seconds or push them out of the arena. Remember this taijutsu only, no ninjutsu or genjutsu, only hand-to-hand combat. If Mizuki-san or I see you use anything outside of taijutsu, you will be disqualified and given a reprimand. Understood. Everyone nods. Uruka smiles. Good. Now, remember this is just a friendly spar between comrades, so have fun. Let's begin with number 1. Come forth. I wonder who my opponent will be. Naruto asked himself, looking over the assembled student body. The first match was just between two civilian children and was of little interest to him. His eyes lingered on Sasuke, the boy he met earlier before entering the academy. He would not mind having a go at the Uchiha boy. Naruto felt like he would make for a strong opponent to face, maybe even another rival to test himself against. Sasuke noticed him staring and gave him what Naruto assumed to be the trademarked Uchiha smirk that he heard so much about in the Hyuga compound. The boy raised his paper, and to Naruto's delight, it held the number 9. Naruto returned the smirk and held up his own paper, getting an affirming nod from the boy before returning his attention to the match. The matches were not interesting to watch, mostly inexperienced civilian children having fistfights. On the 5th match, they did get two kids from shinobi families sparing each other, which proved to be more entertaining but still nothing noteworthy. The 8th match did get a raised eyebrow from Naruto as Shikamaru got paired against the boy that almost made the mistake of calling Choji fat. The Nara boy muttered his favorite word before the match and after swiftly beating the boy. Naruto and Sasuke were in the arena before Iruka could call out their numbers. Are both participants ready? Iruka asked, looking at both boys. Hi, begin. Both fighters sifted into their taijutsu stance. Neither one made a move as they analyzed each other. Both trying to get a feel for what the other was capable of and would do. In this, Naruto had an advantage. He had several pairs of eyes floating above and around the arena, offering him a full 360 view and then some. The advantage was only slight though. The young Jinchuriki was still trying to learn how to read people's body language. A few seconds in, the first move was made by the Uchiha boy. He ran to Naruto and shot out his hands, aiming for the chest. Naruto intercepted blocking or deflecting several blows while trying to get in some hits on Sasuke. The boy was just as quick to block and deflect Naruto's blows. No, he was just a bit faster. So, he's faster than me. Naruto thought, filing that bit of information away. That meant there was a chance that Sasuke could get in a strike quicker than Naruto could react. A second later, he noticed something else about the Uchiha boy. He's losing steam fast. If Sasuke did manage to get a hit on Naruto, it would be a blow that Naruto could take. The same could not be said about Sasuke. He was faster and had better reflexes, but Naruto could outlast him in terms of endurance and stamina. It seemed that Sasuke had figured this out as well, judging by the glint in his eyes. A moment later, both boys broke off their clash and jumped away from each other. They began circling each other, still holding their stance. They had learned a lot about the other from their first clash. Naruto now knew that Sasuke was faster than him and his fighting style empathized that by focusing on fast and precise strikes, if trained to the fullest, Sasuke could overwhelm his enemies through sheer offensive might. Sasuke, on the other hand, had learned that his opponent had more stamina than he did and thereby outlast his offensive and could even break through his defenses if given enough time. With this information, both boys had to figure out how to beat the other. Sasuke was faster. Naruto had more endurance. So, the question was, could Sasuke attack fast and often enough to beat Naruto, or could Naruto outlast him long enough to tire Sasuke out and land a decisive blow to end the match? The answer came soon enough. Both combatants lunged at each other, and this time they held nothing back. The fight had become a storm of punches and kicks. Sasuke was mostly on the offensive side of the fight, but Naruto would intercept most of the attacks. But inevitably, as he feared, Sasuke did manage to get a few blows through Naruto's defenses. But they were nothing Naruto couldn't take. In the same vein, Sasuke was fast to stop any attack from Naruto. But unlike the blonde, his defenses were not as good, and however few it may be, Naruto got a few powerful blows in on the boy. Blows that Sasuke struggled to take. With a kick from Naruto, Sasuke was sent skidding across the arena and short of breath. It became apparent that despite the advantages that they held over the other, both were more evenly matched than they thought. Both also knew that their next clash would decide the victor. Sasuke was short on breath and had a noticeable bruise on his face. One more good blow, and he would be out. Naruto, however, while not showing it was reaching his limit, the many blows he had taken from Sasuke were adding up, and he could feel it. If Sasuke could avoid getting hit long enough, he could beat him. But despite this, Naruto felt a smile creep onto his face. He was enjoying this fight. Sasuke was proving to be better than he thought and was looking forward to their future spars together. Sasuke had the same smile on his face as well. Both boys slipped back into their fighting stances and were ready to fin. This match is over. The winner is Uchiha Sasuke. The voice of Mizuki stopped them. Konoha Academy. Class is dismissed. Remember to read up on the First Great Shinobi War. Iruka watched as the class filed out of the room. He sat back in his chair, letting out a tired sigh. It had been almost 3 months since the academy had started, and Iruka had learned that teaching was more tiring than he had anticipated. Though that could be because his class was rowdier than the others, given that it had several heirs from prominent clans were in attendance. There was certainly a wide range of personalities in that group, from the quiet and shy Hinata to the loud, boisterous Kiba. The latter causing no shortage of trouble for Iruka alongside a certain blonde-haired boy. Credit where it was due, at least Naruto had the decency to be subtle about his pranks and to cover his tracks. Did everyone know it was him? Yes, but could they prove it? No. Good thing Hinata was around. That girl had a strange talent for keeping the boy out of trouble. The work was tiring, but at the same time, he found it to be gratifying. Teaching and molding the next generation was an oddly rewarding experience, being able to see firsthand their growth as both people and as shinobi. In the short time he had spent with this class, he came to genuinely believe that they held immense potential. Potential that would turn most of his class into some of the finest shinobi the village had to offer if handled correctly. He would be laying down that foundation, a task he intended to take seriously. A stack of papers was flopped down on his desk, breaking him out of his thoughts. He looked to see Mizuki looking at him. "The papers for today," he said with a distant tone. Iruka felt a small frown coming onto his lips. He and Mizuki had grown distant recently. It was hard to say if they were still friends or not. He had to wonder where they had started to drift apart, the first day at the academy 3 months ago. No. Looking back at it now, Iruka realized they had started to drift away from being friends long before that. That day just made the gap openly apparent to him. Flashback 3 months ago. Both boys were stunned for a moment, and so was Iruka. He looks to his partner and childhood friend. It couldn't have been 5 minutes, and how was Sasuke the winner when in his eyes, both were evenly matched? Naruto and Sasuke turned to face Mizuki, giving him a questioning look. Around them, the class was murmuring, disappointed that the match had ended so abruptly. "Mizuki-san," Iruka spoke to his friend. "If you mind me asking, how is the match over? And how is Uchiha the winner?" He questioned, even though he had a sneaking suspicion on what the answer was. Like most of the older generation, Iruka and Mizuki knew of Naruto's condition. Iruka wouldn't admit it. When he heard the blonde's name called out and saw him walk out to the front of the class, he felt afraid of the boy and perhaps even a bit of hate. He had seen the Kyuubi attack and knew his parents had fought and been killed by the monster. He had seen the devastation left behind by the strongest of the 9 Biju, all the lives that had been lost. The number of orphans it left behind. He had been one of those orphans. It was understandable that he felt a certain dislike towards the boy, however irrational it might be to hold a child who held no control over the events responsible. It seemed to me that both he and Uzumaki-san were evenly matched. But he was an instructor at the academy now, and he took that responsibility seriously. Even if he had to work with students that he didn't feel comfortable around. At least Naruto was proving to be a good kid, so perhaps there was a chance that discomfort would fade away. Mizuki glanced at him, giving a surprised look. Uchiha-san was the winner by the fact that he managed to push Uzumaki-san out of the arena. Mizuki said, pointing to Naruto. Iruka looked at where his partner was pointing and raised an eyebrow. Naruto's foot was just outside of the arena. That couldn't be enough for him to be disqualified. He did say they had to be pushed outside of the arena and not only a part of them. Iruka saw that both Naruto and Sasuke were frowning, they felt cheated. Iruka could not blame, he felt a little cheated too. Their spare had been the best one so far. Mizuki-san, surely that isn't enough to disqualify Uzumaki-san. After I did say, they had to push their opponent out of the arena, not a part of them. Iruka reasoned. Iruka-san, I'm surprised that you didn't know this. According to the Academy rule book, in any sanctioned taijutsu spare, if any part of a participant leaves the arena, it is grounds for disqualification and the victory handed to their opponent. Here, let me show you. Mizuki pulled out the rule book from one of his pouches. Opening it up, he handed it to Iruka. Iruka took the book and scanned through it. Iruka's eyes narrowed. It was just as Mizuki had said. If any part of a participant's body left the arena during a sanctioned spare, they were to be disqualified, and the victory was to be handed to their opponent. Like it or not, as an instructor, he had sanctioned the spares. Granted, he could try to overrule Mizuki's decision, saying that a little levity in the rules wouldn't hurt anyone, but he had a feeling that Mizuki would argue against it. He handed the book back to his partner. I don't like the way you interpreted the rules, he said, deciding that the argument wasn't worth it. What was done. Nothing he could do about it. But I will be holding all preceding spares in the same standard. Understood. Mizuki took the book back, giving a coy expression. Very well, but I don't see what there is to interpret. The rules are clear as day, he said. The two turned back to face their students. Naruto and Sasuke had grown more upset. Sorry guys, but it looks like I'll have to concede this to my partner. Uchiha Sasuke is the winner by pushing his opponent outside of the arena. Sasuke looked like he was ready to argue against them. Naruto stopped him, a sad but understanding expression on his face. Was it a trick of the light, or did the eyes that float around him also display the same emotion? Some even look like they were glaring at Mizuki. It's okay, Uchiha-san. We can always have a rematch, but this time we'll have a full understanding of the rules. The Uchiha boy gave a questioning look to the blonde. He grunted after a moment and walked away. Naruto looked back at Iruka smiling, and for a moment, he felt a twinge in his heart. Thanks Iruka-sensei, I know you tried. But as Mizuki said, rules are rules. For a moment, Iruka saw a mischievous glint in his eyes. Again, how was he seeing emotion being displayed in what are floating eyeballs? It was a look he was familiar with back in his youth. The look of a trickster having found his next target. He decided to keep his distance from his friend to avoid the splash zone. Naruto returned to the group of students. The rest of the spars went on, most when compared to the Narutos and Sasukes were unexciting to watch. There were some goods, ones mostly involving the clan heirs and the few others from shinobi families. Overall, Iruka felt this class had a lot of potentials and was proud to know he would have a hand in forming the next generation of Konoha shinobi. I'm impressed with all of you, he said to his class. I might be biased here, but I believe all of you have the potential to become some of the greatest shinobi that this village has ever seen. I look forward to teaching all of you and seeing you grow as shinobi. Several students were beaming with pride at Iruka's praise. Class is dismissed. I hope you all have a good day, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. The class dispersed, most returning to the main building where their parents' guardians were waiting. Some stayed outside and grouped up with their friends. Iruka turned his head to see Naruto chatting with the clan heirs. They looked like they were trying to comfort him. Iruka raised an eyebrow. He knew the boy was a ward of the Hyuga clan, so it made sense he would be friends with Hinata. But he didn't know that the boy would be friends with the other clan heirs. Those were some powerful connections to have in the future. Iruka suspected that Naruto would need them, especially if he wanted to fulfill his ambition of becoming Hokage. Naruto's goal had made Iruka feel odd. On one hand, it was nice to know that one of his students was aiming so high. Looking back at it now, a lot of his class had goals worth striving for. On the other hand, he felt uncomfortable that the container of the Kyuubi was gunning for a position of power. If did become the Hokage, there was no telling what Iruka stopped that train of thought and mentally chastised himself. What was he doing thinking like that? He had to remind himself there was a difference between the scroll and the kunai, as the blonde-haired boy put it in his introduction. His rational side told him that he was just a normal boy, mostly, and thus far, he hadn't acted like what the villagers made him out to be. He would listen to that side of himself, the other one well that was just a bad idea. He walked up to the group. It did not take long for the children to notice him approaching. To his surprise, the group shifted slightly to a defensive around Naruto. The Inuzuka heir, in particular, stepped in front of the boy. "What do you want?" the wild-looking boy said, hostile. Iruka stopped and raised his hands in a placating manner. He noticed that the Nara boy was giving a scrutinizing look. "I just came to check up on you guys," he said. Kiba, for a moment, looked like he didn't believe him, but Naruto put a hand on his shoulder. Kiba gave the boy a questioning look. "It's all right, Kiba. I think he's okay," he said. Kiba looked back and forth between them before giving a wary nod. Naruto stepped out to Iruka. "So, what is it you want, Iruka-sensei?" he asked with a smile. "Just wanted to check up on you guys," Iruka said, kneeling coming face to face with the boy. He rubbed the back of his neck, feeling a bit of guilt coming over him. "Also, I want to apologize for what happened earlier. Mizuki-san may have been a bit zealous about it, but the rule book did say that. Honestly, there was more than enough room for bending the rules, in his opinion." Iruka suspected that Mizuki's call had less to do with wanting to abide by the rules and more to do with something else. He would have to talk with his childhood friend in private. "For what it is worth, your spar with Uchiha-san was one of the best I've seen all day. It was disappointing not being able to see its conclusion." "You got that right," Kiba huffed, receiving a thump on the head from Ino. "Don't be rude, dog boy," she said, getting a grow and a glare. Iruka restrained a laugh at the two's antics. "Glad to hear you say that, Iruka-sensei," Naruto said, his smile becoming more genuine. "But as I said, it's okay. I'll just have to be more careful next time. Besides, Mei and Sasuke can always have a rematch to decide who is the winner." Iruka nodded, feeling a bit of relief that the boy was feeling too down about it. He was obviously bothered by it, but not in a major way. "That said, who do you think would have won?" Iruka smiled at the boy. "I can't say both of you looked evenly matched. It could have gone either way," he said truthfully. Honestly, it could have gone either way, making Mizuki's call all the more disappointing. "Ah, but Iruka-sensei." Naruto began to put getting some laughs from his friends. "Surely you must have some idea." Iruka rolled his eyes at the boy's playfulness. "Tell you what," he said, getting up. "Sometime this week, say when classes are dismissed for the weekend, we eat at this ramen place I know of and discuss it." My treat. Why did he feel a sudden sense of impending doom? Naruto's smile went from ear to ear. "Are you sure about the Iruka-sensei?" Quote, "I'd think about this carefully if I were you, Iruka-sensei." The Nara boy lazily spoke up. "It will be more troublesome than you think." Iruka held a nervous smile and sweat rolling down his neck. "Why yes, I'm sure," he said. "Well, too late to back out now. You're on, Iruka-sensei," Naruto exclaimed. He grabbed Hinata by the hand, getting a surprised yelp from the blushing girl. "Come on, Hinata-chan, let's go tell Sarah-san and Kurenai-san about the good news." Then the boy sped off, dragging the Hyuga girl with him. Iruka didn't know how to process that. "You're a good guy, Iruka-sensei," Kiba said, walking past him with the others in tow. "But your wallet is going to hate for that." Uruka wondered what kind of trouble he had gotten himself into. He shook his head, an amused smile still present on his lips. He had a sneaking suspicion that the next few years would be very interesting. He returned to the main building to finish the day's work and to plan the next day's curriculum, and have a talk with Mizuki. Flashback end, present day. Following that first class, he had a talk with Mizuki about his prejudice. To cut things short, they had a heated argument and had not talked to each other beyond what was required since then. A part of him wished to reconcile with his childhood friend. But whenever he tried to reach out, Mizuki would rebuff him. Uruka opened his mouth to try and say something, but Mizuki talked first. There is some paperwork I need to get down. Can you look over papers by yourself tonight? Uruka nodded, deciding now was not the time. He would have to wait until Mizuki was ready to get their friendship back on track. I believe so. Thank you for gathering the students' papers and bring them to me. He responded. Being seeing you, tomorrow Mizuki-san. Yes, I will, Yumino-san. Uruka felt a tug at his heart. When had Mizuki stopped calling him by his first name? He watched his old friend leave the classroom. When the door had slid shut, Uruka looked at the ceiling. Kami, where did it all go wrong? He asked no one in particular. He starting to grade the students' papers, he noted that Naruto's had disappeared. Hokage's tower. Are you sure about this? Hiruzen asked. I'm afraid so, Hokage-sama. Weasel reported. It was as we feared. The Uchiha clan is plotting a coup against Konoha. They wish to kill you and several other high-ranking officials in Konoha. And put the village under their rule. The old Hokage finished Weasel's report. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the years more than ever now. How could they have let things get so bad that the Uchiha clan who helped to found this village was now plotting treason against it? How far along are their plans? From what I could gather from my clanmates, the plan is in its beginning stages. There are still several who remain uncertain and wish to remain loyal to Konoha, Hokage-sama. Weasel said. But if things continue as they are, then I fear more of my clansmen will side with the coup. Does it matter? Danzo said. It is clear your clan is filled with traitors if they are planning to turn against the village. Hokage-sama, I urge you, we must strike now before it is too late. Hiruzen whirled around, shocked that his old friend would suggest such a thing. Danzo, surely you don't mean resort to such a drastic measure if there is still a chance settle things peacefully. If we struck now, that would only push those on the fences firmly into supporting the coup. Not to mention how would the other clans view it. No, we will try to settle the problem with Uchiha peacefully if we can. We will not resort to violence until it is absolutely necessary. Hiruzen, listen to me. We must ensure the safety of the village by whatever means necessary. Danzo argued back. The Uchiha have already proven that a peaceful solution is out of the question if they are plotting a coup against us. By delaying now, we only give them more time to plan and prepare. We can end their rebellion before it has a chance to start. Hiruzen, I know you're a soft-hearted fool, but even you must see the clear and present danger that the Uchiha clan is to Konoha. No, I will not be the one to start a civil war within our own walls. The Uchiha helped to found this village alongside the Senju. I refuse to believe that they will so easily turn against it without at least trying to resolve the matter peacefully. Weasel-san, you said that they were only just beginning to plan out the coup and that several of your clansmen are unsure if they should support it, correct? Yes, Hokage-sama, Weasel reported. The decision only passed by a thin margin. What of your father? Does he support this coup? Hiruzen asked. Weasel remained silent, making the old shinobi nervous. I am unsure, Hokage-sama. My father is a hard man to read at times. But I believe that he is reluctant about the coup. Then there is still a chance at peace. Hiruzen said. If we can convince your father that this coup is wrong, we start to mend the gap that has formed between the Uchiha and the village. That may not be easy, Hokage-sama. Tensions between my clan and the villagers have been festering for a long time. Madara's betrayal planted a seed. The policies instituted by Nadaime allowed for the roots to spread, and the aftermath of the Kyuubi attack gave it room to grow. Even if we do prevent the coup, the underlying cause will remain. Weasel finished his explanation. The Hokage smiled to himself. Weasel, if you would remove your mask. He saw a small jolt of surprise in the young man kneeling in front of him. Hokage-sama. Hiruzen raised his hand to stop the man from talking. Please just do it, he asked. After a moment, the Anbu gave a hesitant nod. Weasel removed his mask, and Itachi looked up at Hiruzen. Is there anything else, Hokage-sama? He asked. Tell me, Itachi-kun, what do you think I see? Hiruzen asked the young Uchiha. I do not understand, Hokage-sama. Itachi responded. Hiruzen's smile broadens. Of course, he didn't understand. As wise as he was, the young man still had much to learn and to grow. What I see is a young man who risking everything by bringing me this information. He raised his hand to stop the objection that was no doubt forming in Itachi's throat. At any time, you could have chosen to disobey my orders and conceal the truth of your clan's plan to rebel. I may be your Hokage, but I am still a man, and my power over people is only as strong as they let it be. By reporting this information and by bringing up your concerns about the future relations between the Uchiha clan and Konoha, I can see that you truly want what is best for your clan and your village. I have seen such loyalty and conviction before in your clan. In my old friend Kagami, his descendant, and your friend Shisui, and in your father. Itachi's eyes widen a fraction of a second. Like you, I believe your wish is to remain loyal to Konoha and wants a peaceful end to our problems. If we can find a way to reach out to him, to that part of him that believes in Konoha and its will of fire, then these tragic events can be put to rest. Yes, I know it will not be easy, and resolving the underlying issues will not be either. But history has shown us time and again that the things that are worth doing are rarely easy. But that should not stop us. If it had before then, we would not have this village today. We would still be in the warring states period, our clans roaming the elemental nations and pledging allegiance to the highest bidder. Itachi, there is good in your clan. The curse of hatred may be a real thing within your clan. But they have proven to be able to overcome it many times throughout their history and to be able to work with their former enemies. Good relations with them can happen. It has happened before. First when they aided the Senju in making this village and sided against Madara when he turned against us. Before he died, the Yondaime worked tirelessly to mend the gap that had formed between Konoha and the Uchiha. Itachi nodded. My mother recently told me my father had been the Yondaime's team and a close friend. Fond memories began to drift into Hiruzen's mind. Memories of Minato, Fugaku, and Hiashi spending time together as friends and teammates, their times of joy and grief. Memories he was starting to see repeated in their children. Indeed, they were, and was because of that friendship that the gap was so close to being mended. If only he had not died that day. If only that was a statement he had been saying a lot to himself over the years. He was certain everyone had said it to themselves once or twice in their life. If only I had known this or that. If only I had made this choice and not that one. If only so and so were still around. If only, indeed, life was full of if onlys and what ifs. But there was no changing what had been done, and to be truthful, he did not think there should be. One could only move forward and hope that they learned from their past mistakes and achievements to best prepare them for the future. It is because of that I believe that we can reason with your clan and work with to undo the mistrust that is formed. I know that it never be fully forgotten, and it should never be, but I believe it can happen. We need only to have the strength, the will, and the willingness to do it. To say enough is enough. I see, Itachi said after a moment. I think I understand, Hokage-sama. There was a quiver to his voice. Hiruzen smoked his pipe and puffed out a cloud of smoke. You will one day. Before they could talk more, a slow clapping noise brought their attention to Danzo. Bravo, my old friend, truly well said. He said while he continued to mockingly clap. While you and Weasel are picking flowers with your heads in clouds, the Uchiha clan is still plotting to overthrow Konoha. Hiruzen shook his head, not at all surprised that his old friend had been unfazed by his speech. Danzo, you never change. You see enemies everywhere in the shadows and wars to be fought. You have inherited Tobirama's paranoia but none of his wisdom. Because there are. Danzo responded. You refuse to see it. Your hesitation and cowardice will doom this village. I ask you again, my old friend, please see reason and do what needs to be done. Eliminate the traitors and let me ensure that the remaining Uchiha remain loyal to this village. So, in other words, kill every Uchiha except for the children and turn them into mindless weapons. Danzo, could you have fallen so far? Tobirama, I know you must be spinning in your grave knowing what Danzo has become. Hiruzen thought. Danzo, I will not let turn the Uchiha children into mindless drones and to your secret little army. The crippled old man showed no visible reaction. Hokage-sama, you must be mistaken. I disbanded Nei as you ordered years ago. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes at the bald-faced lie. He knew for a fact that Danzo never disbanded Nei and was actively adding to its ranks through means that would have him executed several times if they were ever proven to be true. Which was the problem? Danzo was frighteningly good at covering his tracks to the point they were non-existent. Even if Hiruzen and a few others did know what was happening, it was next to impossible to prove. Regardless, we will not take action against the Uchiha clan. Hiruzen said, dropping the matter. But Hokage-sama, Hiruzen cut him off. That is final, Danzo. Unless you have forgotten, I am still Hokage, and my word is the law. If you disobey, I will have you punished regardless of our old friendship. Now am I understood? He punctuated his point by briefly flaring his chakra, reminding Danzo of who he was dealing with. Danzo, I said, I understood. Another moment of silence from the councilman before he gave a slow nod. Yes, Hokage-sama, I understand. We will take no action against the Uchiha clan at this time. Good. Then you may leave now. Tell no one of what you heard here tonight. Hiruzen ordered. He knew Danzo would not drop the matter so easily, but for now, the discussion was over. Danzo bowed and left the room. Hiruzen turned to face Itachi. Danzo-san will not give up so easily, Hokage-sama. Itachi getting a nod from Hiruzen. The more that time without you taking action, the more likely he is to act on his own. Do not concern yourself with Danzo, Itachi-kun. I know how to handle my old friend. This is not the first time I've had to deal with his insubordination, and I fear it will not be the last. Hiruzen closed his eyes, briefly meditating on what he would do to keep Danzo from doing anything drastic. For now, we must focus on your clan. What your orders, Hokage-sama? Itachi asked. For now, you and Shisui are to continue monitoring the Uchiha clan and report any finds to me. Furthermore, if you can find out what your father thinks of the coup in SS, if you can push him towards opposing it. Understood. Yes, Hokage-sama. I shall inform Shisui as soon as possible. Itachi said, putting his mask back on. Then you are dismissed. Hi. The young man disappeared from sight. Once the old Hokage could no longer feel the presence of the Uchiha, he walked out to the window, gazing out at nighttime Konoha. It looked so peaceful now, a far cry from how it looked more than 7 years ago, and even now, he knew that its peaceful appearance was an illusion. So many problems plagued his village within and without. The growing discontent of the Uchiha clan. Danzo's continued insubordination. Just to name a few. Then there are the problems from outside their walls. Iwa had long since nursed its grudge following its defeat during the Third Great Ninja War, and relations with Kumo were slowly deteriorating, especially now they had a new Raikage who seemed to hold a deep amnesty towards Konoha. From what Jiraiya's spy network could gather, both villages had started to pass secret messages to each other. Hiruzen feared the two villages were in the process of forming an alliance. Despite his best hopes, Hiruzen knew that war was coming. Once again, the elemental nations would be plunged into that would devastate the land. It would not happen tomorrow and even the next day. It would likely be years before the conflict would start. Like Konoha, both Iwa and Kumo were still recovering from the previous war and from their own disasters. That gave Konoha more time to prepare. Hiruzen had already started to move the academy curriculum towards pushing out battle-ready shinobi. Naruto's class would see a slow shift from their current peacetime-oriented course to one that would prepare them for war. By the time they graduated, the first year's class would be training for the war from the beginning. Hiruzen prayed that he would be wrong, that there was, however slim, a chance at averting war. He had already lived through 3 shinobi world wars. He did not wish to see a fourth. He took another smoke from his pipe. Perhaps it was time to retire for the night. His gaze fell where the Hyuga compound would be. Naruto, you may not realize it now, but I believe you and your friends will be the light that guides this village through its darkest time. Hiruzen left his office. Konoha training grounds. Come on, Uzumaki, I know you can do better than that. Bring it, Ducktail. Ino rolled her eyes as she and her friends Hinata and Sakura watched the boys spar against each other. Class had been dismissed some time ago, and as it was always the case, Naruto challenged Sasuke to a match. Sometimes it was the other way around. Boys, why did they always have to think that everything could be settled by fists? Couldn't they find a way that seemed less physical? Though she shouldn't be the one to talk, since she challenged Hinata and Sakura to more than a few spars, and she to admit Naruto and Sasuke were not the worst offenders. Kiba was the top contender for that honor. Honestly, she didn't know if his loud and obnoxious behavior was due to him being a boy or an Inuzuka, likely it was both. Naruto was a distant second. At least with him, he knew when to behave. She imagined having Hinata around to keep him on a leash helped. Note to self: ask Hinata for tips on how to keep my man in line. Though she did admit, that were a couple of boys how could stand to benefit with they were a little more bold like Naruto and Sasuke were. Choji, you're too nice for your own good, and Shikamaru, you're too lazy even for Inara. She saw Sasuke flip over Naruto, landing behind him and delivered a palm strike to his back. Naruto twisted around in time to block it. Ino, Sakura, and Hinata had sparred as well before growing tired, sitting to the side to watch the boys. They mostly spared against each other and sometimes had a match with Naruto or Sasuke. Who do you think is going to win this time? Ino said to her friends, one eye on the fight. She was impressed that boys were still at it even hours after the girls had stopped. I think Sasuke-kun is going to win. Sakura said with a blush. And Naruto-kun will win. Hinata said, her blush more noticeable. A devilish smile crept onto Ino's face. She knew her friends had crushes on their respective boys. Both boys were very good looking and no doubt they would be very handsome men when they grew up and had their own charm. Though if she had to pick one, she would go with Sasuke. What can she say? Uchiha men had an appealing nature that just begged to be noticed. Plus, everyone knew that Naruto was spoken for, even if the couple didn't realize it yet. Oh, what makes you say that? Ino said, seeing if she could get something out of the girl. Hinata started to poke her fingers together, now being put on the spot. Well, Naruto-kun is a SK skilled fighter, and he doesn't give up. Hinata explained. True, but so is Sasuke-kun. Ino replied. You've seen him fight before. Yay, Ino-san is right, Sasuke-kun is a good fighter. Sakura joined in. He's beaten Naruto-kun before, and he can do it again. Ino wanted to point out that the same thing could be said about Naruto, but remained silent. She knew her friend could be stubborn at times, especially when it came to Sasuke. Is there anything else that makes you think that? Ino asked Hinata. Well, he can see everything with his eyes, so he always knows where Sasuke-san is and knows what he is doing. But Sasuke-san doesn't and can only see Naruto whenever he faces him. Naruto-kun can more easily surprise him if he wanted to. That was a valid point. Ino gave the Hyuga girl that. The Yamanaka girl looked around and up, looking for the floating eyeballs that Naruto controlled. She spotted a few, and she knew that there were more hidden somewhere and that some of them were under cloak, as Naruto once put it. To be honest, she thought the Fudogen was creepy and scary. Who wouldn't? Seeing disembodied eyeballs float around was unsettling to see at times. She had grown used to them like the others and even found it funny seeing others react to them. She also found them to be cute in a sort of creepy way. Weird, yes, but she learned that weird didn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, nor did the creepy. But never in her life would she ever find Shino's Kinkaku to be cute. They were just straight up creepy to her. Hinata's point was seemingly proven right when Ino turned her attention back to the spar. She saw Naruto pinning Sasuke to the ground, a look of surprise on the latter's face. Well, it looks like Hinata was right. She commented. Sasuke will win the next one. Sakura said. They saw both boys get up and took positions facing each other. A couple of seconds later, they launched themselves at each other. Now that we're on the subject of boys, In said, stirring the conversation away from the spar. Hinata, who do you think is cuter? Getting an ep from the shy girl. Sasuke, or Naruto? The blush that covered Hinata's face was all the answer Ino needed. Well IIITH ink TTH that. Hinata stuttered all over herself as she tried to come to answer. Ino swore she saw steam coming off the girl. Next to her, Sakura was holding back a smile. Hinata's crush on the blindfolded blonde was something that everyone could see, everyone except for said crush. Too bad she couldn't see that Naruto felt the same way. Irritating at times, but it makes for good teasing material. Come on, girl, spit it out. Ino pressed. Will ith think ah. She trailed off before whispering something that Ino could not catch. Could you say that again? I didn't hear you. Ino said. Again, another whisper. Ino brought her hand to her ear. Say that again. Another whisper, though this time, Ino could hear more of what Hinata was saying. One more time, please. Ino asked. Ino-san, I'm not sure if this is a good idea. Sakura tried to reason, sounding worried. Ino ignored her. I think Naruto-kun is cuter. Hinata said, a surprising amount of frustration seeping into her voice. Ino wondered how far she could take this. I'm sorry, could you say that one more time? Ino-san. Sakura said. A determined glint appeared in Hinata's eyes. I said that I think that Naruto-kun is cuter than Sasuke-kun. The girl shouted. Ino was surprised that Hinata was even capable of shouting, but nonetheless she smiled to herself. Mission accomplished. Alright, Hinata, you didn't have to shout. I could hear you loud and clear. Her smile grew. And so did everyone else. Hinata's eyes widened as the realization hit her, and she turned her head to where the boys were. Sure enough, Sasuke and, most importantly, Naruto both stared at the girls, specifically at Hinata. Well, now that's a rare sight. Ino thought to herself, seeing a blushing Naruto, not quite as red as Hinata. From the corner of her eye, Ino saw Hinata duck her head into her knees. Sasuke recovered from his initial surprise and took advantage of Naruto's dumbfounded state by ducking down and sweeping out his leg. Naruto fell and was quickly pinned to the ground. Ops, Ino said. Does that count as interference from us? She asked, looking at her friends. Sakura was glaring at her, and Hinata still had her head buried in her lap. Ino smiled nervously. Maybe she did take that a little too far. Ino, that was mean. Sakura said, but I was just teasing her. Ino tried to defend herself half-heartedly. I was still mean. The pink-haired girl reiterated. Look what you did, you embarrassed Hinata in front of Naruto-kun. But, Ino sighed and conceded. Alright, fine, I took that one too far. Hinata-san, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be mean about it. I was trying to have some fun. Can you forgive me? For a moment, she did not get any response from the Hyuga girl. Ino was about to give another apology when Hinata looked cheeks still red as a tomato. She gave a slight nod. It's alright, Ino-san. I forgive you. I know you didn't mean anything by it. Hinata said softly. Ino sighed in relief. That's good to hear. But I am really sorry. I just wanted to have some fun teasing. She explained. Tell you what. You can tease me about anything to get even. She said. Anything in the world. Hinata gave a slight shake of her head. No, it's alright, Ino. Her lips were trying to twitch into a smile. Come on, Hinata-san. Ino pressed. Surely, there must be something that even a nice girl like you wants to tease me about. Like how my name can be short for boar. Sakura scoffed. I do that all time, though I prefer pig, they're cuter. She said. Knit forehead. Ino shot back. You're a regular customer. This a special offer for Hinata. Whatever you say, Ino pig. They heard Hinata giggle a little. See, even Hinata has a mean bone in there. Ino said with a laugh. Come on, Hinata, just one Ino pig, and we're even. You can even take a shot at Sakura's forehead if you want. Hey, Sakura responded. I wasn't the one that made her shout that her crush was cute to the high heavens. This time Hinata's laugh was more audible. It's alright, Ino-san. I don't have to tease you. I forgive you. Alright, if you insist. Ino said, leaning back on the ground using her hands for support. The boys were sparring again. It was clear that they were getting tired now, meaning that the group would be leaving the training grounds soon. Honestly, Hinata, you're too nice sometimes. You could use a mean streak every now and then. Who knows, maybe a certain somebody might like it. She said with a sly smile. Hinata blushed grew and was about to put her head into her knees again. Ino stopped her. It's alright, Hinata. I was just kidding again. She said. I'm pretty sure he would like you regardless if you had one or not. Hinata nodded again. Naruto-kun is a very nice person. Said just above a whisper. She hesitated for a moment like she was thinking something over. I meant what I said. Naruto-kun is cuter than Sasuke-kun. She said without stuttering or her face getting redder. Ino decided not to say anything about that and just smiled. In some ways, she was jealous of the girl as shy she was. Hinata had managed to get a hold of a good boy to be with. Someone who cares for her in the same way she did. She wished she had a relation that good and sweet. Ino knew that most kids around her age did not tend to think the same she did and seemed to be stuck in the mindset that the other gender was yucky. To be fair, a lot of the boys she's met were on the disgusting side. But she was Yamanaka Ino, and she wasn't like most kids, and she often thought about the prospect of having a boyfriend one day. Unfortunately for Ino, her prospects were not good. As mentioned before, most boys she met were not to her liking. There were a few candidates that could work if she was willing to invest in them. But they had their own problems that made the possibility unappealing to her for different reasons. 2. She felt they were more like brothers to her. One was already spoken for, the other. Ino looks back to the spar, gazing at a certain boy with black hair. The other had a lot of competition for him. Ino internally groaned, wondering if there was someone out there for her. She decided it was best to shelve that line of thinking before it got too depressing. It looks like the show is over. Sakura said, pointing in the direction of the boys. Both boys were lying on the ground, flat on their backs. Indeed, I say it is. A voice answered. Ino wasn't sure whose scream was louder, hers or Sakura's. Either way, she was certain Hinata and whoever was behind them were going to be deaf for the next few seconds. Ino shot upturned, seeing Hinata and Sakura doing the same. Instinctively Ino assumed a fighting stance but faltered when she saw who it was. Uchiha Itachi smiled down at them. Apologizes. I did not mean to scare you. He said. Though it is good that you are quick to react, it may save your life and the lives of others one day. Ino and the others relaxed, seeing that they were in no danger. Ino got a better look at the eldest Uchiha brother. While she did have something that could be called a friendship with Sasuke, acquaintance might be the better description. Naruto and Hinata were the only ones that spent any significant time with the boy, but she had never met his brother in person. Heard a lot about him from Sasuke and seen him from afar, yes, better never directly met. Ino felt her cheeks warming. If Sasuke turned even half as good looking as his brother when he grew up, then he was only going to get more admirers. Hello, Itachi-kun, Hinata said. How long have you been here? When you got out of the academy, Itachi answered. I was coming to pick up Sasuke when I saw you heading for the training fields. So, I thought I would watch your training. He had been watching them this whole time. That's kind of creepy, Ino said before she could stop herself. Itachi tilted his slightly towards her. Again, I apologize. I did not intend to come off as being creepy. I just wished to observe how skilled you are. He looked over to where Sasuke and Naruto were lying. Sasuke has been improving by a lot of late. Perhaps the academy has improved its methods since I left. Ino somehow doubted it. Itachi seemed to have caught onto her thoughts. Or maybe it is something else that is the cause. He didn't turn away from watching the boys. He remained silent as though he were considering something. Ino tried to get a closer look at the older Uchiha, trying to discern his thoughts. It's good that my little brother is making friends. I believe you will be good for him. Having friends can be a good thing, especially during rough times. There was something off about the way he said that. Something that raised a red flag for her. She didn't why it was just the way she felt. Could it have something to do with whatever was happening with the Uchiha clan? Her dad wouldn't say anything when she brought it. He said it was nothing. She knew when someone was lying. Whatever was going on, it was something that worried her father, and that scared her. Whatever Itachi thought, it was gone. He looked back at the girls. I have had the pleasure of meeting Hinata-san here. But I believe I do not know who you two are. He said, gesturing to her and Sakura. For now, Ino thought it best to keep her thoughts to herself. I am Yamanaka Ino, she said. The heir to the Yamanaka clan? Itachi asked. Ino nodded. He looked to Sakura. I'm Haruno Sakura, she said shyly, looking away. Sakura? Itachi questioned, looking at the girl, before a small smile formed on his lips. A fitting name. It is a pleasure meeting both of you. My little brother speaks well of his classmates. Sasuke spoke about them to his brother. From what I saw, he was not far from the truth. No, it's an honor to meet you, Sakura said, echoing Ino's thoughts. Sasuke-kun speaks a lot of you. He admires you a lot. Yay, he does. Ino agreed. He often tells us he wants to be like you. It almost reminds me of the way Naruto-kun looks up the Hokage. Hinata chimed in. Itachi's smile grew at their statements. As his brother, I'm happy to hear that, Itachi said. At first, I was worried my little brother wouldn't be able to open up to anyone and make friends. I am happy to say my fears were unfounded. He walked out from the girls and towards where the boys were. Come, let's collect the boys, and Sarah-san and I shall escort you home. Sarah-san, when did she get here? Ino asks, looking over to the boys seeing the Hyuga woman standing over Naruto with a fond smile. The two were chatting while Sasuke was looking at his approaching brother. Since we got here, Hinata said. She's supposed to watch Naruto and me today. She explained before walking away to join the others. Ino groaned, making a mental note to work on her sensory skills. Come on, Sakura, let's go. Konoha Bar. Hiyashi walked into the bar feeling tired. A rarity for him, but today had been a long one between dealing with the clan elders and the Konoha Civilian Council. He was in the mood for a strong drink or two. The Leaf Spring was his favorite for several reasons. Firstly, it was a shinobi-only establishment and solely by former shinobi, so he did not have to worry about any civilian, namely members of the Civilian Council. Secondly, it's some drinks that were almost impossible to get anywhere else. He had yet to figure out where its owner got them. As for the last, this place held some good memories, and Hiyashi, for whatever reason, found himself to be in a nostalgic mood. He walked past the tables scattered around the bar, mostly being ignored by the patrons, either too drunk to notice someone else coming or not caring. A few did give him welcoming nods as he passed. He came to the bar and almost froze up when he saw a familiar face sitting at a stool, or more accurately, a familiar back and shoulder-length brown hair. The figure was slumped over the bar and did not seem to notice the presence of another person. Hiyashi recovered quickly and took a seat next to his old friend and teammate Fugaku Uchiha. "A bottle of Snowy Sunset, please," he said to the bartender, getting a nod from the man. With the bartender gone for the moment, Hiyashi turned his attention to the Uchiha clan head. The man was nursing his drink and had a longing expression on his face. "I didn't expect to see you here, my old friend." Fugaku looked up from his drink, confused that someone would talk to him. He turned his head, opening his mouth. "Who are?" His question stopped short as recognition shot through his eyes. "Hiyashi-san, is that you, or have I gotten drunk?" he asked, inspecting his drink closely. Hiyashi shook his head, smiling. "Yes, Fugaku-san, it me, your old friend Hiyashi. As for if you're drunk or not, that I can't say. If you are, then you're not deep into that hole enough to start imagining things," Hiyashi explained. "Though if you are imagining me, it proves your lack of imagination." Fugaku rolled his eyes at the jab. "It's you all right. What brings you here? I don't see you here often," he asked, taking a sip from his drink, finishing it. "I could say the same thing about you," Hiyashi replied. "But to answer your question, I had a long day today." "A really long day?" Fugaku gave him a sympathetic tilt of his head. "Clan elders or the council bothering you?" he asked, signaling another bartender to get him another drink. "Both," Hiyashi answered. "Normally, I'm able to handle them, but today both were particularly grating. A good drink seemed like a good idea to relieve some stress." "I assume you've had a long day as well." Fugaku remained silent. He turned his attention to his drink, giving it an uncertain look. "You could say that," he said after a moment. "You could even say I've had several long days." Hiyashi raised an eyebrow. It may have been a long time since the two had any meaningful interaction, not since Minato died, but he could still recognize when his former teammate was troubled by something. "Things have been busy in my clan of late. I haven't had a chance to myself for a while." An understatement if there ever was one. Tensions were rising with the Uchiha clan. Rumors were running around that the Uchiha were somehow responsible for the Kyuubi attack 7 years ago. Every day more people were starting to distrust the Uchiha clan, and the Uchiha were becoming more isolationist, starting a cycle that fed into itself. The bartender returned, placing a blue bottle and a small drinking glass on the counter in front of Hiyashi. He thanked the man, opening the bottle and pouring its contents into the glass, stopping just short of its rim. Hiyashi placed the bottle down and picked up the glass. Holding to his nose, he took in its aroma and downed it in one gulp. It was a sweet drink and had a powerful kick to it. "A snowy sunset?" Fugaku questions with a small hint of humor in his voice. "Now I know you've had a long day." Hiyashi placed the glass down and examined the bottle. Its simple appearance was deceptive. This bottle was more expensive than most people could afford in a year and was difficult at best to get a hold of. How the owner came to get a stash of the stuff was a mystery, the same going for the dozens of other rare and hard-to-find vintages he kept. Most accepted that the man just had good connections in the industry. "It's good stuff," he said, pouring himself another drink and downing it. "I'm glad that." Hiyashi paused as a memory resurfaced. His first time entering this bar, being dragged in by Minato with Fugaku close behind, it had been after the completion of their first A-rank mission. "I'm glad the Minato introduced me to it. He always did seem to know where to find the good stuff," he said with a sad smile. He heard a huff escape the Uchiha's mouth. "We can blame Jiraiya-sensei for that one. That perverted sage corrupted our blonde friend. You remember how pure and sweet he used to be. Kushina did not help, though I suppose she did keep him from being a pervert." There was a fond smile on his lips. Hiyashi shook his head, a small snort coming from his nose. Memories good and bad were flooding in. Their first meeting was in the academy. When they became a team, the image of Fugaku being tied to a stump still brought a laugh to Hiyashi. Their C rank, their first kills, becoming Chunin. Attending each other's weddings, being there for the birth of Fugaku's first son. Seeing Minato and Kushina being buried together. Hiyashi's smile faltered. That had been a bad day for him. Seeing them buried had driven home that he had lost two good friends. I miss him, he said without realizing. When he did, he turned his head, seeing that Fugaku was still smiling. But it wasn't a happy one. It was sadder. I do too, he said, breaking an awkward silence. Hiyashi, he paused like he was considering something. Where did it all go wrong? He asked. Somehow Hiyashi suspects the question was for some else as well. Pardon me, he inquired. Where did it all go wrong? The man repeated himself. We used to be so close. We were friends, teammates. No, we were more than that. We were brothers. Only our wives were as close to us as we're to each other. Even then, there were things we didn't tell them. Things we only told each other. Our fears, insecurities, our dream, and everything else in between, there was nothing we couldn't talk about. We helped each other whenever we needed it. Granted, we didn't get along all the time. We had some legendary fights. Hiyashi nodded. Yay, that we did. We both know how much of an you can be. I won't argue that, Fugaku responded, putting his glass down. I can be a tough man to get along with. Too often, I have to wonder why Makoto hasn't left me. That is because she loves you as Hitomi does with me. Hiyashi answered. I will admit that I had my share of being a jackass, Kushina would put it. Fugaku nodded. Back then, we had Minato to keep the peace between us. Then he paused again. Then it was like the words won't be spoken. Then we didn't. Hiyashi finished for him. Their drinks had long been forgotten. Fugaku remained silent. Tell me, Hiyashi, was our friendship so fragile that all it took was the death of one of us? Or, more accurately, it took Minato dying. I have to wonder if one of us took his place, would the two that remained still be close today? Hiyashi had thought about it more than once. What if Fugaku had died? Would he and Minato have remained close? Or if he had died, would Fugaku and Minato have remained closed? It was a thought he didn't like to think about and often was quick to shelve it whenever it crept up in his mind. Now though, he couldn't so easily put it aside. How could they have drifted so far apart when they had been so close before? Surely, they would notice and would have tried to mend it earlier, right? But that didn't happen. Minato had been the heart and soul of their group. Without it, the center couldn't hold. At first, after his death, they had remained close. But slowly, like a rock being eroded by the wind, they had grown apart until they had stopped interacting with each other altogether, except for when it was needed. The last time they had a meaningful interaction was. Fugaku caught onto his thoughts. 2 years ago, he said. More than a few times, I was tempted to take him in. Hokage and the village be damned. That boy deserved better than the isolation he received, and we both know for a fact that orphanage was abusing him. But I could never go through with it. Something always seemed to hold me back. There was an unspoken statement that hung in the air. But I guess I don't have to worry about that anymore. You were a better friend to Minato than I was. Hiyashi shook his head. No, I wasn't. I'm just as bad a friend as you were. It took him saving my daughter and getting his eyes torn out for me to finally take action. Even show how bad of a father I have been. But I suppose, in the end, we did make the right choice when it counted. Fugaku questioned. You support me when I announced that I was taking the boy in as a ward of the Hyuga. You even went as far as to threaten the civilian council when they got into an uproar. Hiyashi explained the memory of the councilman cowering in fear, bringing a genuine smile. How is he doing? Fugaku asked. He's doing good. He's got a lot of his parents in him. The Hyuga clan head began to chuckle. He especially got his mother's deviousness. Fugaku's smile was a strange mixture between horror and amusement. Remind me never to get on that boy's bad side. I don't think my pride and ego can handle whatever his mind could cook up. He even has her density. My daughter has been crushing on him from day one, and he has yet to notice. Fugaku rolled his eyes, snorting. Let me guess he's also heads over heel for the girl. Uzumaki's, it's a wonder that they ever had any kind of family, let alone a clan. One of the great mysteries of the world. Hiyashi commented. You may already know this, but my youngest son Sasuke is attending the academy. Fugaku said after a moment of silence. It seems he's made friends with your daughter and the boy. I do. Naruto tells me a lot about him. Hiyashi said, nodding his head. He found it funny how his daughter, Minato's son, and now Fugaku's son were growing close as friends. Fate sure seemed to love her rhymes. It reminds me how we used to be. Yes, it does. My son talks a lot about Naruto and Hinata too. It's nostalgic in a way. Maybe that's why I'm here today, and perhaps even you too. Fugaku said, getting a raised eyebrow from Hiyashi. Maybe we're here not just because we had a long day, but perhaps both of us had hoped to see the other here today. A frown formed on Hiyashi's lips. Now seemed like a good time to ask. Fugaku, what is happening? What is going on with your clan? Fugaku remained silent a moment that seemed to stretch out into eternity. I can't say, Hiyashi, but what I can tell you is that things have been moving forward fast. Faster than I can keep up with. He gulped down another glass. I know we just had a conversation about us trusting one another and being able to talk about things. But I feel like I need to sort this out for myself before I can talk to you. Hiyashi nodded. It wasn't the answer he wanted to hear. I understand, Fugaku. But feel free to talk to me about it if you change your mind. Remember, it may have been a long time, but we are still friends. Hiyashi poured himself another drink. I probably won't, Fugaku said, but if it is all the same to you, I don't mind talking to you some more. It's been far too long, so maybe it's time we mended that bridge. You won't get an argument from me. Hiyashi agreed. They both raised their glass, clinging them together. Fugaku took a gulp from his glass before placing it down. Then his face scrunched up as he considered something. Hiyashi, I do have one request to ask of you. As a friend and as a fellow father. Hiyashi raised an eyebrow at Fugaku's statement. Yes, anything. The Uchiha clan head turned around in his stool, giving Hiyashi the most serious expression he had ever seen on the man's face. In the coming weeks or even months, if anything happens to me and or Makoto, anything at all, I need you to do one thing. What is it? Look after my son.